Durant has asked the Nets to trade him. There's a report in the New York Post today that the Nets are open to keeping Durant, though Durant appears to have no interest in staying there. Wilbon, where do you think Durant is most likely to end up and when?
Tony, I told you this on your podcast yesterday. I would not be entirely shocked if Kevin Durant stayed in Brooklyn. I wouldn't. Because I think it's going to be so difficult to get a trade that's going to make him happy. Not that they have to run it past him, because he doesn't have a no-trade clause in his contract. But if we're just talking about the new destination, saying we don't want to have this, even though we got him for 4 years, we want his best for that time. Kevin Durant's going to be 34 years old. I'm not even sure that you want to give up 5 first-round draft picks plus an all-star plus another player, a frontline player, to have a guy who's going to be 34, and maybe you get 3 great years. Maybe because Kevin Durant is so unique physically as well, you get 4 great years. But still, I could see him in Brooklyn. I don't know where, because they don't know where. Durant doesn't know where. The teams don't know where. All the teams that want him, and every indication, as I know from people I've talked to, half the teams, if not more, have made inquiries. Okay? So nobody knows where he's going to be. And the deal is going to be so convoluted, Tony, that leads, if there is one, to wherever he lands, that we can't sit here right now with a crystal ball and see that. He has sent Miami and Phoenix. I'd like one of those more than the others, but who the hell knows?
Okay. So we're in the first week in July. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for Kevin Durant to go wherever he wants to go and take all the time you need. It doesn't matter to me. Wherever he lands is going to be a contending team. Obviously, everybody knows that, because he's a great player. Even as his age advances, he's still a great, great, great player. What stands out to me about all of this is that Kevin Durant finally decided, I can't play with Kyrie Irving anymore. I don't want anything to do with him anymore. Kevin Durant, whatever his flaws are, it's always seemed to me that he likes to play basketball. He gets hurt and he can't play, but Kyrie Irving just doesn't like to play and just stops playing whenever he doesn't want to play. And Mike, I cannot separate this timeline. The day after Kyrie Irving said, I'm opting in, Kevin Durant said, I'm opting out. The day after. To me, 2 and 2 equals 4. I don't think they will go anywhere together outside of Brooklyn to play, and I don't know what they're going to do. I will say this about Kevin Durant. I have the numbers somewhere here. I think he's played 90 games. In the last 3 years, he's played 90 games out of a possible 226 in Brooklyn. And if he gets hurt again at his age, that could be the beginning of the end. People in D.C., of course, say, let him come home. He's not coming to D.C.
No,
they're not going to trade Bradley Beal. But Bradley Beal and Kyrie Irving can't play together. The most interesting thing to me would be if he went to Golden State. But, Mike, we've talked about this, you and I. He left that team and those players for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going back there.
Tony,
but again, it's the first week in July.
Tony,
do what you want.
If I'm the Warriors, I'm not blowing up what I've got. I just won a championship without him. I don't need to blow up what I've got to get a 34-year-old dude back. As great as Kevin Durant is. And the thing I'm left with Kyrie Irving is the 2 greatest players of his generation, LeBron James and Kevin Durant, he couldn't get along with the 2 of them. He couldn't get along with the 2 of them. He can't play with them. And they basically ultimately said, oh, no, enough of this dude. So all the people who want to praise Kyrie because of his handles, you can't be with him. He's toxic. Wake up.
The tweet we're talking about, Chris, you as a Lakers fan saw this yesterday morning, and I cannot wait to get your thoughts. I'm going to read the tweet. I miss KB in reference to Kobe Bryant. He would understand and explain everything that I'm not allowed to. Honestly, he was the greatest Laker ever. He understood team over self, meaning your rewards would come if you valued team goals over your own, and then everything would fall into place. All can reply. All right, Chris, as a Laker fan, who is Jeannie Buss aiming those very subtle jabs at?
I mean, it seems like she could be aiming those at Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook. I don't think it's LeBron James, because LeBron James has essentially done everything right in his NBA career. And since he's come over to the Los Angeles Lakers, done nothing but, be a model citizen and help lead this franchise to another championship banner in the rafters. So I don't think this is a LeBron thing. I think this is aimed at Anthony Davis and questioning his commitment to winning. This could be aimed at Russell Westbrook and questioning his commitment to buy into what new head coach Darvin Ham might want him to do in the plan moving forward, the way that the Lakers want to play this upcoming season. It could be directed at some of the guys that Jeanie Buss could potentially be interested in bringing in, like Kyrie Irving. So we'll see what ends up happening. But, in terms of somebody that was able to establish the culture, there's nobody that you would set over Kobe Bryant with except maybe Magic Johnson. Like those two guys, in terms of making the Laker culture what it has been over the great years where they were able to call themselves a dynastic team, like those are the two guys that you would put front and center. And right now it feels like Jeanie Buss is having a hard time finding that missing piece, finding that dude.
I thought they may have been directed toward KD and maybe Kyrie Irving, to tell you the truth. And I know it's more likely that it was somebody in her own team at this point. But I think she's kind of pointing to other players around the league who don't value this. But to this point, it's where the Lakers really have to double down, in my estimation, on everything that has gone wrong. And if I am the Nets, I am going to listen on this kind of a deal. The Lakers need Kyrie Irving. There's no other way to put it. The Lakers need Kyrie Irving. And for me, if you're going to do that, the Nets should absolutely listen on Russell Westbrook. We can all agree, when you are trading away Kevin Durant, you are not winning a championship that year. Is that fair? I think that's fair.
That's fair.
You have 1 year at $47 million, an expiring contract that you can either hang on to yourself or you could trade for valuable assets at the trade deadline. So if I'm going to take Westbrook back in a Kyrie deal, here's what I can do. I can make the Lakers take Joe Harris and his contract, and I can take a first-round pick from the Lakers, whether it's 2027 or whatever. And it is more than a fair deal for the Lakers. They have to stop barking up the Seth Curry tree, because that contract is one that the Nets can live with. Joe Harris, on the other hand, is one that the Lakers can take the deal to even out the money. And, Chris, Joe Harris can help them as well. He's not dead weight for them.
Well, they need shooting, right?
Yep.
That's been the biggest issue for the Lakers. They haven't
That's
been
what
able
they
to
need
put
around
enough
LeBron.
shooting
You've always talked
around
about
LeBron
that.
James. So adding Joe Harris definitely does that. We'll see if he comes back healthy. But I like that deal, Carlin, that you put out there. And if you're the Nets, that's probably the only deal where you're talking about being able to get draft assets that could be significant in terms of helping you rebuild your team, because you got to think that 2027 first-round pick has got to be included in that deal if you're going to give them Kyrie Irving, right? That has to be included. So, in looking at where Kyrie's value is around the NBA, that could be a win for both teams. That's a win for the Lakers because they get another piece that they could add to their roster that would go along with complement Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Not to mention, Kyrie brings some shooting too. So if you add Kyrie, you add Joe Harris, all of a sudden as a Lakers fan, I feel a lot better about, the supporting cast for LeBron and trying to take advantage of the twilight of his career. The only problem with that, Carlin, is you don't know if Kyrie's going to show up. Like, that's the only problem with it. Kyrie might say he wants to get to the Lakers. The biggest question mark is, will he show up? Will he be motivated? Will you get the best version of Kyrie Irving? And I think the reason why the Lakers would be willing to bet on it more so than any other team around the NBA is because LeBron James is there, and LeBron James won a title with Kyrie Irving.
LeBron James knows to a degree.
No doubt.
To a degree, what makes Kyrie tick.
Yeah, and so as uneasy as Kyrie makes me as a Lakers fan, I can understand why the Lakers, Jeanie Buss and Rob Pelinka would be willing to make that deal. And the deal makes a whole lot of sense for the Brooklyn Nets because, let's face it, Kevin Durant is not going to be on that team.
No.
And that was the only reason that you were hesitant to trade Kyrie Irving to the Lakers for Russell Westbrook. It's because you didn't know whether or not KD could coexist with Russ at this stage in their career. So now that you know you're moving on from KD, go ahead and make the deal for Russell Westbrook and for that 2027 first-round pick. And, oh, by the way, you can ship some more salary out of the door, and you'll be able to have that much more financial flexibility going into the summer of